Yo, good morning, good afternoon, good night, to whenever you're watching this. But today I brought to you another what if they swapped fights, but instead this time I brought to you a far more interesting one, and one that I actually delayed for a while because the matches were, I kid you not, too good in some sense. And that's what if Madara and Obito swapped fights. Obito being a character who abused the name of Madara, which just has power in it of itself to challenge not just the 5 Kage during the summit, but the whole world at large. So what if Madara was actually in Obito's place, and what if Obito, Madara's protege, replaced him in all of their fights? Kicking this off with our first match, we have EMS Madara whilst alive versus Hokage Minato. And before we begin, I also want to address why I don't have Madara and Obito section, kind of going over them. And that's simply because through these forms, they probably just should be talked about during the matchup itself, and there's no way to really talk about them in between and link each other. So what if EMS Madara actually battled Hokage Minato during the Nine Tails attack? Which, to ultimately understand this match, we might need to look back at the Obito fight to determine if Minato is actually only as strong as this 17-year-old Obito, or could he step up to face Madara, and which he was confident in doing, so that could say something. But the fight first begins with establishing Minato's superiority blatantly. Minato by this point has been holding off Kurama via using chakra to amplify and match the seal, and arguably even fighting him in a mental scape for at least 4 to 8 hours, with some sources even having the approximate average being closer to 12 to 24 hours for a firstborn child, which Naruto is. So Minato here has been holding off Kurama from somewhere between 4 and 24 hours, hence why Minato has 4 sweat markers when he first appears, showing just how taxing this really was to hold Kurama off for that long. But then Obito appears and threatens Minato to move away from Kushina, and as soon as he does, Kurama starts to break the seal. Then Obito tosses baby Naruto in the air, and Minato completely blitzes Obito's combat speed with his body flicker. However, Obito planned on this. He planned on Minato outspeeding him, hence to why he ever placed the bombs in the first place. Then Minato escapes via Flying Raijin, which is actually a pretty consistent theme. Minato uses Flying Raijin or Flying Thunder God 7 to 8 different times, a jutsu that literally creates a crack in space and time to then enter into a subspace and reappear, with him also just using Flying Thunder God Guiding Thunder, a variant of the Flying Thunder God that is likely just more taxing due to how it's sustained with the principle of the larger the object, the harder to transport, with the explosion from the very Biju bomb completely engulfing the entire Hokage rock, just showing not only how Minato can deal and transport these sorts of attacks, but also just react and outspeed them, which is consistent with Minato fully blitzing the entire Kurama to save Kushina. So Minato is a stamina beast and was probably just fatigued against Obito. Coupling this with how we know he's holding back, it becomes pretty telling of how Minato is greater, yet people will still attempt to use scenes like this to conclude that Obito is faster than Hokage Minato, when this just probably isn't the case. Minato wasn't expecting Obito and probably halted his movement after passing through his head, similarly to how, if you were to, how you might slow your punch if the target were to just weave. You're not just going to start flying at them or anything like that. And he also just blitzed Obito prior, so he may have been expecting Obito to be slower and was hence not going all out. And neither was Obito in this sense, so this scene right here is just kind of null, which is pretty consistent just after this encounter, after Minato realizes just how deadly Kamui is, as when he teleports away, he then starts to have much internal dialogue about the ability and realizes he needs to test it again via running at Obito at a pace which Obito could be convinced was Minato's top speed, which he does. Minato gets caught in the chains, teleports out. Obito's confident now. Obito, then being more confident in being able to catch Minato, believing this was his fastest speed, tries to Kamui him again, forcing his tangibility. Minato, who already charged a Rasengan, then blitzes and moves so fast to a point where Obito is still convinced Minato is in his original position, forcing the tangibility, and then Minato slammed him. This means that Minato's movement speed and reaction speed was so much greater than his previous set of it that it could only be concluded that Minato was holding back, which would also align with how Minato would have to hold back in the subspace created by the Flying Thunder God for him to fully alter his his entire degree of movement, I guess per se, and to angle the Rasengan downwards. And for those who are unaware of what I'm talking about, subspace, the Flying Thunder God teleportation ninjutsu isn't exactly that. It's classified under teleportation ninjutsu, yet isn't teleportation, and would be more accurately described as transportation. A transportation of speed through a subspace so fast it can't even be compared to body flicker. It's flight across space and time. It's so fast they could only be called space-time movement. These are all lines from the second data book's in-depth writing on the technique, elaborating even more on how this would be a technique that he actually used to earn his reputation during the Third Great Ninja War. Coupled with his already unrivaled speed, he would then just be praised among all ninja as the greatest in godlike speed, which would be a pretty consistent rhetoric when considering the 4th Raikage's version 2 databook page, which mentions how it could overtake KCM1 Naruto and boast a godlike speed not inferior to the Yellow Flash, which is crucial not only to establish a difference between the Yellow Flash, Jonin Minato, and Hokage Minato, but also to establish how Hokage Minato isn't just some KCM1 Naruto or Raikage level threat, and would be much closer to KCM2 Naruto whilst alive. As Kakashi actually compares the two in the war arc, Minato throttled Obito, who was a threat that required Naruto to master the Nine Tails to beat, this obviously being KCM2, which is pretty consistent with how Minato already completely blitzed every Hokage to the battlefield, including Tobirama Senju, which would be consistent with the Flying Thunder God having movement due to how Minato mastered the technique to a point where Tobirama never could, this being a speed technique, meaning that Minato is just far faster than Tobirama inside the point A to point B subspace, which is just consistent with how Tobirama's clone and his Flying Raijin just wasn't even fast enough to reach the threshold. Again, rhetoric implying a speed equation, yet Minato is able to move so fast he actually blitzes his own Flying Thunder God timers, with him actually just teleporting the Ten Tails Biju bomb off shore, then arriving to the mainland to talk to Naruto, then the bomb relocates, showing both the caliber of speed Minato is and how this technique is a speed technique and is not instantaneous, just really high speed, which is basically consistent on all grounds, with Minato just never calling it teleportation. During the Obito fight, both he and Kushina, a master of sealing, referred to it as transportation. So, with Minato now being established to be faster than Tobirama via both the Flying Thunder God and their showings via body flicker, how would he stack up to Madara in speed? And is Madara, whilst alive, actually capable of keeping up with a man so unrivaled for his time that the chapter 238 synopsis statement says he had unrivaled strength, placing him above Hiruzen, who's just stronger than all 5 Kage. Minato also has the chapter 543 synopsis statement, stating that, Minato was even faster than the 4th Raikage, a man who is said to be the fastest shinobi in the world, and the 3rd data book also just implying that Naruto is the only one in the world who could surpass Minato. This would include, Itachi, Hiruzen, Killer Bee, Obito, So, could Madara keep up? Was Madara this far ahead of his time as well? And to answer that, I would actually probably say yes. This EMS Madara being a rival to a live Hashirama, a man with so much aura and power surrounding his name that Yamato's databook talking, about just by the virtue of having Hashirama cells, he has the ability of God that became unparalleled in the shinobi world. Yet Madara Uchiha is stated in the 4 databook to be an equal match to Hashirama, so close of a match that the difference between victory and defeat during their battle was paper thin. And also, not to interrupt, but I just have to say, if you guys are enjoying the video so far, you just like, what you hear, then please consider subscribing, maybe checking out more of my videos, or just, like, comment, those would all help me out a ton. And, if you do check out some more, I'm sure you'll find something you enjoy, so by all means. Now, one criticism I've heard many people bring up that I myself have wondered is, how is this the case? How is Madara equal to Hashirama? Hashirama was clearly superior in large-scale ninjutsu, such as how he was weaving and reacting to all of Madara's Susanoo Kurama amped attacks in just his base, with just his basic wood style and his 1000 armed Buddha statue overpowering at least 10 Susanoo amped Biju bombs in one panel. So how the hell are they equal, and where does this statement even hold credence? And well, it could be missed by some, but if you notice, once Hashirama declared he wouldn't hold back on Madara and slammed the Biju bombs down, then subdued Kurama, he actually came to engage Madara in a taijutsu scuffle, and then we cut to how Madara and Hashirama are extremely wounded, with Madara being in much better condition compared to Hashirama, despite Hashirama's healing factor being active due to how it actually heals Madara's bite, which actually happened rather early in the fight, as we know Madara had his full armor on, which also would just indicate how he blasted apart Hashirama's armor on his arm, where it's still fine, meaning that this probably happened in Sage mode, or at least in those early portions where he's stronger. With those conditions being laid out, it could then be concluded why this databook statement is probably very consistent. Hashirama was greater in ninjutsu and Madara was greater in taijutsu, or at least they were equal, as this slash is what the databook shows when stating they are equal, meaning that Madara's greater in taijutsu, Hashirama's greater in ninjutsu, they could be equal. So Madara's raw combat speed, which is what would be engaging Minato here, is just really impressive. But is it enough for Madara to just bully Minato, or does Minato still have what it takes to keep him in the game? Does Minato scaling above Tobirama place him above Madara due to how Madara seemed to think Tobirama used to boast the fastest speed of any shinobi? And to be honest, probably not. When Madara is making this claim, there's way too much skepticism that could be applied. For example, you could possibly just conclude that you cannot conclude, take that back, you just cannot conclude that Tobirama is faster than Final Valley Madara, or Hashirama for that matter. The first that I would like to question is the wording as in boast, which is one thing that many people like to question. However, I do think it's disingenuous, and it's just at least a disingenuous way to discredit this statement, seeing as, yes, for this to be an objective trait, it does have to, it just has to be the second Oxford definition, but it also just likely, just when you consider there is literally like 10 other statements from objective sources like data books where non-living things boast about a trait, something along those lines. But a better way to address this statement would just be how Madara would have to be basing this off the last time he saw Tobirama fight, and this would just demonstrably be when Tobirama blitzed Izuna with the Flying Thunder God, which Madara just didn't have any context for when he looked over, so him concluding that since Izuna is second only to him, and Tobirama just blitzed the heck out of him, he probably might just conclude that Tobirama is faster than himself here. That just does make sense. However, later, Madara does note how Hashirama is the only one who is an even match for himself, with Hashirama also just having similar statements to, Tobirama, just probably, he probably just isn't faster, either Final Valley Madara or Peak Hashirama. This could also just be Madara implying that of Tobirama's era, so where all the 5 Kage are gone, including Hashirama, Tobirama was the fastest, which is, it probably would make sense as well. So there are just ways to conclude what Madara is actually talking about, and concluding that it's just Tobirama is faster than Madara and Hashirama in their prime just probably isn't it. This isn't to say that Tobirama is ass or anything like that, as he actually still can keep up with base Hashirama, such as how they can combo together in the Warg, and they actually can combo, again together, versus, like the suppressed old man Hiruzen. So this actually would just place Minato certainly above base Hashirama, who he also does outspeed to the battlefield, which Minato is just above this. And then when you consider him being close to KCM2 Naruto, you then kind of conclude him being more of, the relation to KCM2, since it's able to actually slam revived Madara despite him having sensory. So, could Minato actually beat Madara? Is this speed tier enough? Probably not. All we have is just to say that Minato is fast enough to not get blitzed around by Madara, but really would have trouble catching Madara with anything being, either ceiling or Rasengan, which also probably just wouldn't kill Madara by any means, as we actually know you can just scale above or to the Rasengan and its attack potency, such as how Pain catches Jiraiya's Big Ball Rasengan prior to absorbing it. So, to wrap it up, Minato definitely does do well, as he can mitigate, any Biju bomb for Kurama and keep up with Madara in combat, but he just doesn't really have anything to put him down. However, I actually do think there is a chance, as the Flying Thunder God offers a margin of error. For example, despite Tobirama being much slower than Madara, he actually can still think and react to then avoid being hit to try again with another attack against this faster Madara. Minato could also do the same, but he's just much faster and has a better flying Raijin, so Minato might be able to pull off like a Reaper Death Seal if you think he can pull Madara's soul out, but that's probably it. With this being said, I actually think this puts, I also think this means that Madara would have trouble putting down Minato as well. Even like when you account for Minato's flying Thunder God feats, such as how he can intercept 8 Gate Sky, which just many people try to debunk by saying Guy was in the air, which obviously just doesn't follow, as the entire Sekizo barrage was in the air. And if you pay attention, Guy gets more speed after every single step, so this would actually probably be far faster than his first ones. So this is just an actual impressive feat for Minato. So in conclusion, I think Madara would still just, overpower Minato eventually, or just cause too much damage to the village for me to give this to Minato. So I would say that Madara probably wins like 7 out of 10 times. In a similar vein of scaling and interaction, we have White Mask Obito with the Rinnegan from the War Arc versus Sage Mode Hashirama when he fought Madara. This meaning that Obito will of course get Kurama, and Minato's contract seal will no longer be active. However, Hashirama does still just have, he still just does have access to his QB suppressing wood style, which would just makes this much worse for Obito, and for a couple reasons. First is how Obito lacks a Susanoo that forced Hashirama to stall in removing Kurama from the fight, and secondly, Kurama alone probably isn't much to the wood style if Hashirama were to actually go all out, as again, even in Yamato's data book, the wood style is an ability from God, and Hashirama is God in this case. Adding into this how Obito never really used Kurama as an effective unit against an opponent he was already facing, such as how he just forced him to rampage the village when he fought Minato. It probably just won't help him, in his fight against Hashirama. So how could Obito stack up to this Hashirama, or at least, like this Madara and Taijutsu, where, like raw combat speed, for that matter. And all we know, we have the Edo Madara, and that is the comparison, probably to many people's surprise. Obito and Madara are actually very relative. Both perform very good against KCM2. Naruto without the Avatar, both are able to react to him, even trick him, and both use Uchiha Reflection Blade, and of course Kamui, which was able to just, move through the hands. But even later, we could see they both jump and land on the Ten Tails at the same speed. Obito jumping after, making this more of at least a reaction and movement speed for him, which obviously is consistent for not only the KCM2 interactions, but also how they can just react and match each other's fire style jutsu, with Obito's Bomb Blast Dance actually traveling a larger distance than Madara's, with this exact thing also just happening whenever they use the Kamui Kunai and the Yasuke beats. However, despite their reaction and combat speeds being very similar, I would actually give the edge to Obito, even if you think Madara is slightly faster, on the basis that Obito's Kamui allows him to deal with and combat much faster and much stronger opponents than Madara does, such as how, like, when the Rasen Shuriken and Rock Lee were moving at the same speed through them, Lee completely kicks through Madara, and Obito just phases the Rasen Shuriken. This is crucial if Madara wasn't in Edo, as this ability is the difference between winning and losing, similar to how, the Flying Raijin would grant a, room to avoid something deadly in battle just by thinking, except for Obito, he doesn't have to do this. As, Minato, the best Flying Thunder God user we know, states that Kamui is greater of a space-time ninjutsu than the Flying Thunder God. However, for Obito, it's not just better in how it's a free space rather than a temporary subspace, it's also fully passive, and Obito has to think to materialize, or else his natural state will simply just be the phasing. This is very clearly shown when he first lost Rin and he went to hold her and he just passes straight through her, and the data book corroborates this as well, with it also just, stating its passive nature. This means that even if Hashirama perception blitzes him, he just kind of passes straight through it. This is why Minato had such a difficult time having to test it than to just capitalize on it, at first, because he needed to be so fast where Obito was forcing a materialization period. This isn't just useful for your typical taijutsu exchange, but even in like large scale jutsu that Hashirama is prone to using frequently, such as how Obito just phases straight through Naruto's avatar hand despite it being far larger than himself entirely, even against Konan, right? He just has like his 3-tone way out and is just falling, phasing through bombs. So these pressure attacks are also just null unless they can be used for over 5 minutes straight on a specific area, due to how that's how long Obito could remain in Kamui for. However, I still wouldn't underestimate the amount of attacks he can phase through, as when he entered the rain village to talk to Pain, it was raining very heavily even though it was a Sunday, a day that doesn't really rain in Amegakure. The reason for this was Pain was actually testing Obito's Conway times. This is how Konan knew so much, and is probably much more plausible than saying she watched him really close when he was sitting on his ass at the final valley. This means Obito phased through every single raindrop that whole time, whilst again in 3 Tomoe, to the point where the timers had to go off. So Obito is also just a stamina monster and just an endurance monster overall, as even when Kakashi stabbed a Raikiri through his chest, leaving a gaping hole, he still just returned, resisted Madara's rod control while he was actively forcing signs for Obito to try to weave. Yet these attacks just pinned Tobirama, instantly without any signs, held Hashirama, and then here's Obito with a giant hole in his chest doing better than them. Then later getting the 10 tails ripped out, which had Hagoromo bedridden for 6 months. Check out these 3 are weaker than you think to know why. So during their exchange, Obito won't go down easily even if Hashirama could get away to hit him. Expanding off that though, my other issue would just be how the hell Obito would ever hurt Hashirama. Then we arrive to he probably couldn't, and since this is a live Sage Mode Hashirama, he would sense be faster than Edo Madara, who Obito is relative to, meaning that Obito probably just couldn't catch him in Kamui either, leaving this fight even more so than the last ambiguous. If you say Hashirama could catch him, I'd agree. If you said Obito could catch him, I'd agree. Could Hashirama actually apply that pressure though for 5 minutes? And maybe. We have no clue if his Slug Sage Mode, check out my short on that, has any stamina downsides, and we simply don't have any quantification for how long the Buddha hand attacks can last or how long they did last. So could Hashirama just whack the hell out of the ground with a wood dragon, and then it's just like Obito could probably just phase in and back out while Hashirama draws the arm back. So we're in a pickle here. Hashirama could also just hide and shield himself with golems, so to be honest, I think either side wins this. Hashirama is stronger, Obito has better abilities, so I think each fighter could win 5 out of 10 times. Now, speaking of Obito's crazy abilities, we're now placing EMS Madara, a live Madara, without Kurama, in Obito's place against Konan's trap. So, is there any feasible way for Madara to survive? And definitely. However, I do think there are exceptions and things that should be discussed here. Firstly, I think it should be established, I don't care how underrated you think Konan is, she isn't touching Madara. In her first attempt to kill Obito, he quite literally is casually reacting to her paper via him just talking while they're going through him. And even then, even when she does do well and nearly catch him in a suicide attack, Obito's first sentence was straight up, "I didn't take you seriously enough." Then, noting how, even though it was a suicide attempt, he was just faster. So then when you compare an EMS Madara, who is just objectively above Edo Madara, who is comparable to a full Rinnegan amp on top of this Obito, it's pretty clear that Madara could just evade this suicide attack, or could just use the Uchiha Reflection Blade to blast it back, which would probably kill her, which is, basically just one of the 2 easier ways that he wins here through the initial interaction, where Obito and Konan kind of were clashing ideologies, more on Konan's part there, but Madara may just not, and he might just blitz and kill her. However, I would say this is kind of disingenuous to give him, as the point is, could he survive the trap? Not just, well, he'll kill her before it happens. Now, I guess if you really want to die on this hill and say he doesn't even engage it, he could just hop on the Uchiha Reflection Blade, and just do that to her suicide attack, and then hop on it like a surfboard, and as the ocean of 600 billion paper bomb goes off. But past that though, Madara has 2 arbitrary ways of winning this battle. First of the which would be Izanagi, which he did to use, he actually used to escape his fate against Hashirama, sacrificing his right eye, which did keep him convincingly dead for at least long enough for him to be buried deep into Konoha's mountains and have Tobirama study his ocular nerves. So by all means, this would certainly be longer than 10 minutes, meaning that he could just Izanagi and then beat Konan like Obito did. Or maybe if you actually think the Naruto games are canon, he could then just use his true reverse time MS ability and then just reverse time back for him to body flicker away onto the distant land in the background. Konan also just can't hold this jutsu for that long, or long enough, anyway. So since she could just, kill a much weaker, Obito, or couldn't kill a much weaker Obito, I don't think she could ever kill Madara. Madara, who has the same ability that Obito did to survive, but just arguably better. Another thing Obito never really tried, and for basically no good reason except for him, underestimating her, is just genjutsuing her after she initiates the emissary jutsu, as that actually requires her to consciously input chakra into it, which genjutsu would just disrupt. And that's not all. Even if you go further back and say that he could just genjutsu her before she attempts the suicide attack, which wouldn't really be mitigated by anything Konan has, considering Madara was able to just fully control a wandering, full power, complete Kurama. So I think in conclusion, Madara definitely survives the attack like 8 out of 10 times. Now, following that up with our next bout for Obito, we have him battling the Biju and Tobirama in revived Madara's place, and for this, we will just have him face the Biju and then fight Tobirama sequentially, which, to be honest, despite Zetsu's remarks about Madara doing better than Obito, Obito's performance would just be probably much better than Madara's due to, again, Kamui. And the first attack that Madara is faced with, is Shukaku's sand bombs, which Obito would just, he would just face. Then Matadabi's paw strike, which he actually could also just face, which means he wouldn't get kicked into Isobu Shell or kicked by Son Goku. Madara also just got paralyzed and was slammed by every Biju at the same time, which would give Obito the opportunity to use Izanagi if he actually wanted. Obviously, this would be a huge risk, but even just to say that, he would ever get put in this position, or, he does just have avenues out. Other than Kamui, however, this is assuming he wouldn't just weave, either Madara, Madara just kind of states that he wasn't moving at his most refinement just due to how, he had Hashirama's healing factor and was kind of fighting recklessly. The way Madara actually won was due to summoning the Gedo statue, which Obito also just has, giving him the ability to use the Biju rods to, hold them or stall them, and then briefly subdue them before he could just chain them back up with the Gedo statue. So by all means, when it comes to the first task, if he was in Madara's place, he would have just done quite well, and Madara's claims are merely in response to Obito having to gather them around the world. Obito also would just have the Rinnegan Sensory and Sharingan Precog to then react to the initial slash from Tobirama, which basically would just cement this as a win for Obito, as there's no viable way to really say Tobirama could blitz Obito, and there will of course be people in the comments talking about, well, Tobirama could react to Jubito, which is way stronger than White Mask Obito, which is just, in their defense, it may hold some validity. However, it presupposes that him reacting to this Jubito places him above Obito, who also couldn't have done the same, when this just isn't the case when you account for how Tobirama is reacting to Jubito's power when it's completely fluctuating, when he just isn't at a consistent level. So when he reacts to him, he could be at 100%, 34%, 11%, any percent. We just do not know. It's completely unquantifiable, which would just be consistent with his main feat outside of the Flying Thunder God, placing him, in reaction to the initial charge just greater at different locations all throughout Jubito's body, which one of these bombs was actually placed on the left side of his left knee, something that couldn't have ever been placed by hand due to Tobirama's trajectory matching his brother's after the attack, meaning that he couldn't have moved his legs or center of mass, which is consistent with how he could raise his arm to place a seal, meaning that he could also just, he could have just shot them out in random places like the tandem paper bombs, despite the bomb seals being actually different. Tobirama just simply has the bombs in his paper, in his paper made body as well. He could have also just done that. Either way, Old Man Hiruzen has virtually the exact same feat where he's shown capable of, thinking during the change, the charge, perceiving, and then moving his body slightly out of the way. But in Hiruzen's case, he had to deal with another variable in speed, being the rod extending along with his flight, whereas Tobirama didn't, and Jubito just used the stagnant TSOs as shields. All the other main talking points would just be how he can off-guard Jubito with Flying Thunder God and outpace Casey in 1.5 Naruto and whatnot. And it does show his caliber of shinobi, but it doesn't really assert him above Obito. This Obito was outpacing KCM 2 Naruto and nerfed Kakashi at the same time, such as how he would also just, capture them and, with the wood style and just react to most of the attacks with the Kamui, just allowing him to completely outpace Naruto and phase through his chakra hand. As I'm sure you've noticed, I haven't even talked about Kamui yet. Kamui is again a passive ability and just requires a conscious thought to be materialized. So things, he doesn't, he has to actually have a reason for his materialization on top of the Geto statue, which he wouldn't. So Tobirama would just probably fly right through Obito, bro. Could you just imagine if he just like flies straight through and then off the Geto statue? Anyway, off topic, right? But he just doesn't have any way around Kamui in this scuffle, and here Obito could just phase each one and then suck him into Kamui, or just use the rod. So White Mask Obito just stomps like 8 out of 10 times against Tobirama and the Jinchuriki. Next up, we have War Kakashi versus Edo Madara in the Kamui dimension, and yes, I know this would be virtually impossible, but whatever. And to be honest, while Madara probably still wins just by virtue of how fatigued Kakashi is by this point, and how Madara already has an Edo body and is already as strong as Obito, or maybe even greater, I still think the case for Kakashi doing well is certainly there to be made. Many people, are still under the impression that Obito didn't try at all against Kakashi and would have just dogged him, which just isn't true. I mean, if Obito, if he really would have thought there was any time to ever use the Renegon absorption, it was this. Obito was not going to fight Kakashi with the Nine Tails chakra, which is just made further consistent with how Obito declared he would kill Kakashi, yet was nearly pushed on the back foot in their taijutsu scuffle, with Kakashi then kicking him to the ground, going to Raikiri him, with Obito being off balance and on the ground, still using the Renegon rod to stab Kakashi, which isn't to say that Obito's distance was much greater to cover here, as it very well could be, but Kakashi does still have to fully change his lead foot and then thrust his hand forward. So Obito holding back, people just kind of abuse the statement of him talking to Madara where he states he had Kakashi movement, and it just doesn't simply imply that he wasn't trying the whole fight leading up to this and following the stab, and there really just is a lot more in this fight. So let me know if you guys want, like, you misread Kakashi versus Obito or a topic like that. But to be real, there just isn't really a way Kakashi could come out on top other than maybe Kamui, which may work, but Izanagi is always an option too. So conclusion, Madara definitely wins this like 6, 7 out of 10 times. Now, for Obito's final matchup, it's Jubito versus Six Pass Naruto and Sasuke, which just a real quick and easy answer for this one, because Jubito doesn't have the Kamui factor and can be hurt by Sage Mode. Naruto in BSM was able to pressure this Obito very heavily, except now it's 6th Pass Sage Mode stacked with KCM2 instead of a regular Sage Mode, so we literally have this Naruto, who could already pressure Jubito. He just gets a full 6th Pass amp, so I mean, I'm just not going to sit here and yap and waste your time to go over their abilities and feats against Madara and how this is how they combo attack, because bro, Naruto and Sasuke win 10 out of 10 times. Last but potentially least, we have, what if Madara replaced Obito against Kaguya? And the answer to that would probably just be, he'd probably do a lot worse than DMS Obito, as DMS Obito could actually react to Kaguya's attacks, which, would be the same Kaguya that was spamming her dimension swap via her Amino Manako, which is a jutsu that requires so much chakra, she's the only one in the world who can do it, meaning that Madara's entire reserves couldn't use it once, which is just a really bad look when you also consider how he doesn't have the Kamui to save Sasuke and stuff, and just isn't as strong. He just isn't strong enough to pressure Kaguya like much at all. So yeah, if Madara was there instead, they would have done much worse. But that's basically the video. I really hope you guys did enjoy. I truly am even more curious on what your thoughts are in the comments below. If you did learn something, or you just found the video chill, or you want to check out more of my content, then please, by all means, please do so, or maybe even subscribe. Have a great day. God bless. As always, love you guys.